Hello. This week's episode is a two-parter, so you'll get the part one this week and then part two next week. Basically, me and Eva just spent so long talking about so many different things that I thought it would be best to split the episode. I absolutely loved chatting with Eva this week. She is so amazing and had so many brilliant perspectives on sport and how it affects your life and also how to navigate time after sport. I just thought she was absolutely brilliant. So for that reason, she has got a two-part series fabulously, Eva. So I hope you enjoy. Welcome to your weekly reminder that only dead fish go with the flow. I am a little bit beholden today, so I'm hoping I can use the wonders of my recording software to get rid of my snotty nose for this recording. But if there are any snotty nose noises during that, I'm so sorry. This week we sat down with Eva Fabian, world championship medalist in the 5K open water swimming and the 25K open water swimming, which I have been informed is no longer an event, but it is but it is a flex.
Piece of history. It's a flex. I'm hoping it will come back. I'm hoping they just removed it for one Worlds and it's coming back. I hold on to that.
I don't think I've ever swum. My idea of swimming is getting in the pool and doing doggy paddle for maybe 2 or 3 lengths and then getting out again.
And it should be. I mean, I really don't think that it's necessary to swim 25K. And I also didn't think that up until the first 4 hours and 57 minutes of that race. But the last 500 was a service, you would say. It was a bit of a flex. So yeah.
Yeah, because it was, I think I saw the time on your Wikipedia page, which was 5 hours and something.
Yeah, and actually that runs fast. So just 25K lore, it really depends in open water, the sport I compete in. We're swimming out in the sea or the ocean or whatever you may have, rivers, lakes. And in the 25K, the weather conditions really contribute to your overall time. So if it's super wavy or there's tons of currents or tons of jellyfish, that slows me way down, but it will slow the race down quite a bit. And 5 hours is right around the pace that we would actually go for the 5 and 10K. So it was actually a ridiculously fast race the whole time. And I didn't know if I was grateful for the 1 hour less or very resentful of the speed. But I can't really compare at that point. So
The speed stands, though. It's on the Wikipedia page. It's all
That's
true.
Right.
It's all confirmed. Would you like to sort of mention that your sport is open water swimming, but would you like to name and explain the sport for anybody who, well, probably a lot of people who
Everyone.
don't know about it?
Absolutely. Okay, so I started off pool swimming I think almost 100% of open water swimmers. And I actually started off doing the 50 breaststroke, which my university coach did not believe. And I had to pull up results one time and show him from the archive of New England swimming. So I started off as a breaststroke sprinter and I ended up swimming the longest distance possible freestyle. I started off in the pool and then eventually sort of made my way into open water. And open water swimming is the marathon we always say of swimming, because the race in the Olympic distance is 10K, which comes out to about 2 hours. And so because of that, until the 10K was introduced in 2008, there really wasn't sort of a marathon distance for swimming. The longest distance we had is the 1500. And for women, that wasn't even until recently. So the longest distance was between 8 and 15 to 16 minutes, which is not really a distance race, so to speak, if you think of really, if you compare it to running and the other sports where there's really a distance event. So for me, that was great luck that swimming got the distance event right when I was coming up, because that was clearly where my talent was and not, in fact, in the 50 breaststroke. And so open water swimming is kind of in any body of water that you have, oceans, rivers, lakes, the sea. You kind of deal with whatever conditions are there. It's part of what makes the sport really fun and interesting and very strategic. And you can kind of think of it like very slow NASCAR. You're swimming around a very large course that's usually a rectangle. Back in the day, it was usually a 2.5 kilometer loop, and you would do 4 of those for the 10, 2 for the 5, 10 for the 25. And now it's more 6 loops of 1.6K is more the standard. So yeah, it's very slow NASCAR. And also they can choose which shoulders, so it's not always left-hand turns, which I think is fun.
Okay. When you were saying about new distances being added in for like the women's side of it. I was like, in my head, I'm like, rowing and open water swimming, they're like shaking hands right now. Like,
Yeah, I think, but also like rowing and swimming in general have a lot in common. It's like the early mornings,
mm,
100%. Like it's just rowing and swimming in the gym. And also, I think being out on the water is something that like open water swimming specifically has in common with rowing. That's very unique. And one of the things I truly love about the sport was just getting to actually like be in nature and experience different parts of the world from that way, which is very like different from I love pool swimming and I love pool racing, and it's like the most incredible sport and super fun to watch. But as an athlete, it is pretty cool to get to experience like the beach in Italy, which is a pretty cool part of the sport. So
yeah, I was going to say, you must have seen some like amazing venues with open water swimming.
for sure. And I think that was one of the main draws of the sport for me, other than the fact that it was much more suited sort of to my physicality and to where my talent lied. But I also really enjoyed the fact that you get to see the world in a different way. There was a European World Cup that was in Tuscany, and there's like the Rome World Championships. We swam in Ostia. European Championships was in Ostia again, like many years after my first World Championships ever, which was in Rome in 2009. So you get to see so many amazing parts of the world and swim in like incredible water. But also, I think what was important about that for me is when I started swimming, genuinely the water quality was better than it is now. And I think that's something that I almost wish people would get out and see more in the sea, whether that's if they like to just go snorkel or like to get into the ocean. And it kind of connects you to the earth in a way that's really unique, I think, for sport. And really made me aware sort of like what's really going on in the sea and the timeline that it's on. So
That was one of the things that I've actually got written in my notes was obviously for the Paris Olympics that's just gone, they had everyone swimming in the Seine, and that they'd like made this massive effort to like clear it up, and there was people were like there when I googled it earlier, it was like people threatening to poo in the Seine to like like to boycott the Olympics, even though it was like already going ahead and everything.
yeah.
And I was wondering if like the best and the worst part of the sport is like the best part obviously being the water, but also the worst part being the water as well. I don't know what you've got written
Actually,
down, but
yeah. That's kind of when I was thinking, like sort of just like reflecting on the sport. The best part is getting to be in nature. For me, another one of the great parts is like the strategy. It's kind of like if you combined chess with like MMA in the water. Is what it ends up being, because it's very sort of like it's you're designing a strategy over 2 hours that's going to change every second, and it's very dependent on the conditions, who's in the race, what's going on, how you're swimming that day. And I really like the fact that it's like kind of volatile, like for want of a better word. Like it's always very different, very dynamic. And I loved that. But I also just really loved being in nature. I've always loved getting to swim in the sea. When I was younger, you like could not drag me out of the beach. And I guess that stayed true like through my life because I ended up doing a career where that was like my job to be in the beach. But I also, the worst part is some things from the water for me, like genuinely the worst part of the sport. And this is going to sound trivial, but it's real, is jellyfish. Like genuinely the worst part of the sport. And my very good friend Becca Mann, who I adore, she has like this like mental strategy for just being like, I love it. And I could never get into it. Like no matter what I did to try and reframe anything, I'm a distance swimmer. Like I'm very used to that sort of like trying to find a way to reframe things and approach things and find something positive to focus on. I could never reframe jellyfish. I just like lived in dread. So so there are things that like even in something you truly love, in a sport you really love, there's going to be something that you're just like, I can't do it. Like I can't handle it, but you have to.
it's
So that's
like
mine.
it's like I remember we were in I think like a beach in Scotland once as like very young children on like a family little trip up to Scotland. That'll be nice over the summer. And there were like loads of jellyfish like washed up onto the beach. And I remember, I mean, my sister might be a bit like, don't tell anyone this, but I remember her having like an absolute breakdown about like trying to walk around them because just the like, even though they couldn't do anything, they were just there. Like the texture or like the potential that they could like
No, it's
reach out
me.
and grab you.
It's me. And also, like, this is this is another 25K moment. This is, I guess, is going to become an unintentional theme. But in my first World Championships in 2009, I swam the 25K. Mostly probably because I was 15 and I like did not do math at that time in my life. I was like, that sounds doable, all good. I could do the 10. And I wasn't like, that's going to take a long time and it's very long. So I was just like 25K, here we go. Um every single loop, like every time we went around one of the turns, there was just a field of jellyfish waiting for us. And I think the worst part was knowing it was there every loop, like not even the swimming through it, just knowing that it was coming. And I just remember being like, although the one value out of the jellies is that I now am dreading that more than like the actual distance. So I was like trying to find a way to like joke around with it in some way, but I really couldn't. And I just hated them. But at least it like provided me with some distraction.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss, like
Truly, it
knowing that you're doing a loop and you're about to swim through like a little field of jellyfish
was
every
the
time.
worst. Absolutely. Yes. I would rather have just been surprised each time and forgotten between like a Dory scenario.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Yeah, truly though.
Do you have a, I don't know if your sporting ick is going to be linked to jellyfish, but do you have a sporting ick?
No, I promise it's like not. I'm done with the jellyfish talk for now, but mine is actually like a bit more serious. When I was growing up, like the thing that I think I hated most and one of the things I really like detest to this day is the narrative around girls and women in sport where when I was growing up, a lot of like coaches in my area would not my coaches, but like coaches would come up to me and say like, "Well, you only have until like you go through puberty to be fast." Like that was what people would tell me, and that was the overall sort of like sensation and narrative that was put on to girls in sport was you're only fast when you're young because then your body changes and it's over, which is the craziest thing like to say just in any way, shape, or form, right? But also, it is completely unfounded scientifically. Like, it is not at all true. Like, the women who are most successful in sport are the ones who are, like, in their 30s these days. And, like, even when I was, like, going through sport, Natalie Coughlin, Dana Vollmer, Dara Torres, who ended up coming back, some of the greats, like Sharon Van Rundal in open water, like, these are women finding their most success in their 30s. And I think the narrative that like once you're 16 or 18 as a girl to woman in sport, like you're done is like such a misogynistic, horrible thing. And that's my biggest ick with sport, where I just like, I wish you to all the girls and women in sport, throw that out. It's not true. I got better in my late 20s. Everyone improves throughout like their life. It's just an absolute fallacy. So that's my like major ick.
It is utter bollocks. And I don't know if
It's well
like,
said.
yeah,
It's well said.
utter bollocks, a
It's well
professional
said.
term. Um, I yeah, I know when I was younger, I used to do ballet, which is a massive throwback. I used to do ballet until I was 18. And I don't know if it's like the rowing is different because you
Hmm.
can't start it until you're like 14 or
Yeah.
16. So I don't know if the start age is like later, but I definitely didn't come across that conversation in the sport of rowing, but
Yeah.
I have come across it in other sports. And I find it so interesting, like knowing about like how much faster I got once I hit 21 and then how much
Yeah.
faster I got again when I hit 25. And
Mhm.
like I think we used to call it like old lady strength. Obviously we weren't even like we were 25, we weren't
So
old.
young. I know.
We're like, oh yeah, she's got that old lady strength.
She
She's
got
over 21.
the Honestly, though, when you're an athlete, sometimes each year can feel like a millennia. So, like, in that respect, it's like kind of true. But genuinely, I know, I think that that was something I needed to really like erase from my mind as I went through college because by the time I started like a freshman year at university, the narrative sort of around me was like, oh, she's been around, like, she's kind of dusted. She'll probably get slower in school. And
Mm.
not that I listened to it, but I heard it. And I was just like, what is that? Like, we have to stop with that. I think in swimming, it's pretty prevalent. And my hope is that it's less now. Like, I now am retired, so I'm, out of the sport. But my hope is that it's getting less. But I remember being very much like actively against that narrative and also against sort of like my teammates calling themselves old because I was like, girlies were like 21 years old. It is just not true. And it works only in the favor of people who like want to see us fail for no reason. So yeah, yeah, that's my
Mm,
big ick.
that is a really good one because, as I said, I didn't think I'd sort of experienced it as such because it's
Yeah.
like something you get into when you're older. But thinking back on it, my personal view on myself, I was like, 25, 26, and I was PBing and I was doing this
Yeah.
and I was at the peak point of my career, but I still felt like I was past it almost. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so bizarre. And I had this really warped sense of like that I was really old. And then when I retired from the sport, even like the phrase retiring,
It's
I,
so
I
weird.
talk to people in the real world and I'm like, oh, I'm retired from this sport. And they're like, oh, you're very young to be retired. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I am. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm still in my 20s. I'm still in like all of that early, I've seen it on like social media. It's like, I'm just a teenage 25-year-old or a teenage, in my case,
Yeah.
teenage 29-year-old. But yeah, like,
Exactly. It's like very much in young adulthood still. So it just is such a weird narrative to push. And I
mm,
don't buy it. I'm not buying it.
I think it's because it's like easier to like manipulate younger people. It's like
100%.
easier to get your own way. It's easier to push your view across. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I do remember some of the conversations when I was like 25, 26, where it was like, oh, but what about like, if you want to start a family, or I think you should be looking at this job now. And I'm like, well, hang on, I'm still committed to like
Yep.
being an athlete. Like, I'm not
Yep.
committed to starting a family or looking at doing another job. And I do really remember actually being pushed
Yeah.
towards like a non-athlete direction once I hit a certain age, and it is interesting. It's a
Yeah.
good ick.
It's a good ick. It's just it like is a lot of it kind of like causes some inner turmoil until you kind of like let it go and remember that those are other people's timelines for you and not like your timeline for yourself. But it definitely like it starts to stick because it's very prevalent in society.
Mm,
But at the same time, like especially for athletes, like you have this opportunity to have an amazing career, especially like through your late 20s, through your early 30s. And if it's the thing that you love and it's something that you want to do, then absolutely nobody should be telling you that it's time to hang it up. Like, it's just crazy. Like, we don't tell
mm,
people who've like started a career in consulting to hang it up when they're 32. So
yeah.
yeah.
I know also in the UK recently, Sarah Cox, who's one of the BBC radio presenters, she's just walked multiple marathons for comic relief, but she's also done it to raise awareness because of the commentary of women of a certain age like can't do X, or you know uh, so anyway, she's raising the profile for women of the certain age actually being able to like not give a shit about your opinion and do it anyway.
Absolutely. You
Sort
know
of
what's so
thing.
hilarious to me about that is just like women like statistically live longer too. So I'm like, what can't they do?
What is it? There's this statistics where it's like women or men live longer with a wife, but women live longer without a husband and just with a dog.
There you go. I mean, that's it. I'm sort of tired of like the letting anybody's narrative, whatever that might be, tell us like what we can and can't do physically, mentally. I'm just like, okay. So I'm happy you think that, but I'm gonna keep doing this. So
I'll be
yeah.
doing it anyway. Like,
Yeah.
I've
Like
already what was it, swum 25K,
right,
so
right.
I'll do whatever I want actually.
I 100%. I kind of felt like that for I don't know, like 2 seconds after that race. And then I got extremely thirsty and very tired. And then like got over that very quick. But I was just like, I've done 25K. This is a huge accomplishment. And I was like, I need to drink water and sit down. Like, I'm tired.
Our next one, which I'm normally excited for people to start on the hills anyway, but I am very excited about this one. What are we doing on the hill about this week?
Okay. The hill that I'm forever running up. I don't know why that came out that way, but I'm gonna stick with the Kate Bush reference. That was unintentional. Is no pitting women and girls against each other in sport. Like, no more. I guess this is like kind of similar to the narrative thing about like like telling women when they can compete and everything. But this is also something I felt very heavily, is that on teams it was like there's always space for all the guys, but there could only be like one fast girl. And that was like not the something that the girls were trying to push. Like that was just sort of like the idea was like, oh, if there's another fast girl, then it's a threat to her. And like people would say that, which was so crazy to me because I always came from the perspective of like, okay, but if there's someone else fast, then you're both going to get faster. And that's awesome. And if you both keep getting faster, you can push each other and get even better. And I like refused with a grit to ever buy into that. And I actually was extremely like my whole life, I like sought out other women in sport as friends because in my group growing up, it was mostly boys, which was like they were wonderful people and I loved them and they were great training partners. But at the same time, like I was kind of lonely. It was always me in the locker room alone. And like, I was just kind of like at competitions, I didn't have any friends because I was just me on my team. So there were a few wonderful, wonderful teammates that I've had in my life who kind of like were there in times where I was alone. This was when I was much younger. I was at like my first like sectionals, which is sort of just like the first meet outside of regionals. And the legend Elizabeth Beisel swimming was at this competition, and she saw that I had made finals for the first time in this event and gone under 5 minutes in the 500. People will understand in swimming what that means. To everyone else, ignore it. It's good. And at that age, and so she saw that and knew that I had like no teammates, so she came over and like told me good job, congrats, and first time under 5. And she was sort of like my idol because she's just an incredible swimmer. She ended up making the Olympic team starting when she was 15. Like she's like a prodigy and a legend of swimming. And I remember that made like such a difference in my life. So in some ways I think like the Elizabeth Beisel model of just like being there for other people when you, even if like they haven't asked for it, but you know that they have no other teammates there. And we weren't on the same team at all, like that type of interaction, I think also like greatly influenced me. And it's something that I tried to carry forward through university. I swam with a mutual friend of ours, Bella Hindley, who is a wonderful athlete, like one of the best of all time, fantastic trainer, like unbelievable racer mentally, and just like ridiculously talented. And like the teammate experience in college for swimming was super important to me because swimming is quite an individual sport. And having that sort of like team experience is still something I just like absolutely treasure. So I think like the idea that there can only be one fast girl in the group, or immediately if there's a fast girl, it's a threat, or like it's really not a zero sum game. Like you can absolutely become friends. I ended up like making some of my best friends are my competitors, like Becca Mann, who I've mentioned already. She was like, we were like huge competitors. We were going for the same spots at all times. One of my best friends in the whole world. Like we did nothing but make each other better. And like she sort of like taught me to screech wicked at the top of my lungs at swim meets. So I mean, it's like you find these incredible people that you'll be set up against if you don't fight through that. So that's my like that's the hill for me.
I think it is a brilliant hill, and I did a little bit of like, so I always worry when I sit on the podcast. I'm like, this is my beef of the week, and I like
This is the
ramble
beef.
on. And so I really did want to make sure that I kind of looked it up as well. So I found a study in 2015, and it's literally called Mean Girls, adolescent female athletes and peer conflict in sport. And basically there was lots of like points of note for the study, but one of the main bits that I picked out was adolescent athletes, so female, like young female athletes, perceived that their coach had the greatest impact on preventing slash reducing the impact of these inter-peer tensions, and that female
Absolutely.
coaches were more likely to address any tensions and like talk it through and resolve it, and that male coaches would tend to just ignore it. Which on one hand I'm like, yeah, okay, if we're sort of maybe 14 and we're like beefing over something quite trivial or petty that's happened at school, or literally anything, I don't know, stealing someone else's ruler, I can see why as a male coach you probably ignore that. And like as a female coach, it's probably not something that you need to deal with. But as just like sport in general, like you're still setting these people up for life, you're still like
Mhm.
building these people up to be better people. So just like be like, look, let's sit down. let's
Mhm.
talk through it. Like, let's not do this. But I thought it was really interesting that from the athlete's perspective, so they did like interviews with athletes, and at this adolescent age that they're labeled as, they were like, yeah, the coach is setting the tone.
100%.
And
100%.
the other little note that I had underneath it was we actually don't need any help comparing ourselves to other women or each other because it's something we've been conditioned to do since quite a young age, and
Yep.
specifically thinking about like magazines and like as 90s girls, like the 90s and all of that sort of stuff that was like flying around at that point.
That is, like, such a perfect note to add underneath it. I also think, like, so I've seen the very, like, well-managed version of, like, coaching teams, and because 'cause I've been lucky to work with some incredible coaches in my life, and I've seen what that looks like, and I've also seen, like, the other version of that. So like, they're the leadership, and they're the authority figure, and it doesn't matter how much work that, like, the team will put in, if the authority figure is sort of, like, guiding the culture in a way that's not constructive, then, of course, it will have an impact as well. But I think, like, the teams that I've seen work best are ones that not only have leadership from within, but also have, like, really just, like, caring coaches that, like, care about performance, but also just care about people. And I think,
Mm,
like, that was, like, really lucky for me growing up and in university that, like, my coaches genuinely cared about us as people. And they kind of, like, that was, like, the most important thing first and then performance. And I think that also is, in the end, the best thing for performance because there really is no way to, like, sustain high performance without being, like, okay and healthy. And so, I really think that, like, coaching has a really big impact, but also, like, the overall sort of, like, vibe and general culture in sport too. Like, we need to just, like, change that and cut that
mm.
out.
I what was the other little bit that I'd found under here? Oh, here it is. Oh my God, I've got to remember to read it properly. This is like how my brain is sometimes like I'm like so engrossed in the conversation and I'm like, ah, split.
Context switching, it is not easy. I
Uh,
agree.
that's what I was gonna say. In terms of like culture and like female culture, one thing that I saw very recently on I think I like saw it on Instagram, then I looked it up in its actual like article format. But the quote was like great teams talk and touch. And it basically the paper is called The Power of Human Touch, Physical Contact Improves Performance in Basketball, and that's from May 2024. And they're basically saying that like supporting your teammates
Mhm.
provides you with better network support, alleviates stress. The study was based on I'm going to butcher this because I don't know anything about basketball, but like a basketball shooter and the correlation of the amount of times people like high-fived this
Mhm.
person who was about to take the shot, and like whether or not they got the ball in the hoop. There you go, there's my
Yeah.
basketball knowledge. And there was a like basically a positive correlation with everyone supporting that player, like high fives or like I'm not saying go and like touch up your teammates all the time, but like that like social support was alleviating the stress of the
Mhm.
player and therefore they were performing better. So I just felt like that linked really nicely into
100%.
the culture thing.
The culture thing, but 100%, because, like, I also if you think about the times you've been in swimming, we call it sort of like behind the blocks because 'cause you're, like,
Mm,
literally behind the blocks, so our phrase will always be like, "When you're behind the blocks, what are you thinking about?" Or, like, that moment behind the blocks. So that's kinda like my metaphor for just being before the start of something big. And also in open water, like, there's an additional stress to the open water start, which, like, every open water swimmer will know this. You just have to decide that you are just, like, the coolest cucumber and the chillest person because you, like, go to this ready room with everybody, just like in regular swimming, but in open water, it's like the ready room is just like a tent setup that is like incredibly, like ridiculously chaotic. People are putting Vaseline on so that the ocean doesn't like cut their shoulders. Coaches are throwing like gels. They're shouting at each other. Like it's ridiculously chaotic. And you just have to be like chill because you're about to dive in for like a 2 hour sprint. Um, and the one thing that I've found is like, of course, I've been able to be at competitions where I literally do not have like genuinely any friends there. It's like I know people, but there's like no friends. You just go in and you tear it up. But when you have friends before Worlds, like from other countries or from your own team, it is such a difference. Like you sit there, you either like you give each other the high five or you hold hands for 2 seconds. You're just like, we got this. Like it's all good. It's chill. The way that it changes your ability to sort of like lock in and like really just like snap into gear is wild. And of course, it's like a skill you need to develop without, because every athlete's going to have moments where they have to really just like get their act together. But having teammates there is sort of like the secret sauce to not having to spend that energy sort of like internally getting yourself to a good place. They just like help you get there and then you're ready to go. So to me, that sounds like just about right. Also, your basketball knowledge seemed fine to me. That seems like what is happening on the court. So
Yeah. From a non-professional standpoint, the ball
mhm,
has to go in the hoop.
that seems right to me. It's what I've seen. So I think you're right.
Sounds correct. But anyway, I saw that and I knew You're Dying on the Hill was about like pitting women against each other and like, or coaches and parents like pitting female athletes against each other. And remember like my first experience of rowing when I was like 16 to 18. It was very like personal
Yeah.
and individual, or maybe not personal, but it's very individual. It was like you versus you, or you versus this other person. It was like quite a small group. And then I remember like finishing that 2-year block at college, or A levels, and thinking, oh my God, this sport is crap. It's so miserable. And like, you never have time to do anything you want to do. And you can never go out and party. And like, all of these people they're just constantly almost like out to get you. It sort of felt like it wasn't a
Yep.
positive experience. It was,
Oh,
in terms I found out that I really loved the sport and like, as you said, being out in nature and being out on the water. But and I obviously made friends along the way. It wasn't like, okay, it wasn't a complete bum, but it wasn't like the most fun I'd ever had. Anyway, then I went to uni and there was a massive shift from like individual to team, and that was just such a game changer.
mm,
It was so much more interesting to me, and like the stress that I sort of felt pre-competition, it wasn't like, so do or die, and there were people there slapping you, like you'd slap you on the back or high five, and like obviously consensually do this to your teammates, but like it does really alleviate a lot of the anxiety if you can just like be like, oh yeah, this one will be a quick one, or
yep.
I'm
Yeah.
tired, or whatever it is, and like soundboard to a friend.
We actually kind of had that, like, me and a few of my teammates, we were just kind of like, we tried not to sort of like do the dance or lie, but you still would want to like find a positive framing. So one of my amazing teammates in college, Kaylee Silbert, she and I ended up tying for the conference title in the mile once, which is the 1650 yards to tie is like crazy. It does happen, but it was crazy. And we were so happy about it because we trained together all the time and we were like training buddies. We were always doing the same thing in training, and to literally tie is crazy. It was like the greatest moment. But what we used to do is we we would have sort of like phrases that we would use that was not a euphemism necessarily, because we would like tell the truth and we would like get into it. We would look at each other and be like, it's not a day. But we have one more Herculean effort, which was like, we might have a literal 2-hour practice, but we think there's only like one thing that's like that hard. So when we would get to swim meets, we'd be like, it's literally like 2 Herculean efforts. We're swimming like 5 events, but like at the same time, we're like, only 2 of those are like ridiculously hard. So it's literally 2. And of those, you don't feel the first one. So it's only one thing. And I think like having like that soundboard of like back and forth where it like gets you from a place where maybe you're tired, maybe you've got 10,000 other things on your mind, but like being able to laugh with somebody and just like kind of click into gear, like you're saying, like that, just like last high five before you jump is like, I don't know, that's everything to me. That's what like makes sport fun to me.
It's like the first one doesn't count because it's a warm up, and then the
Hmm.
second one is free anyway because it's the last one.
It's so
And so they
exactly.
basically
That's what we say. Basically, we're done. That's what we would say that like as a joke before we'd have something like 1500. So like something that's just crazy. We'd use that exact logic to be like, essentially, if you look at it, we've already finished the practice and we're good to go.
It's like whatever gets you through. I think
Yep.
that leads us really well, hopefully quite smoothly onto your favorite moment in your sort of journey so far with sport.
My goodness. I had to pick two, okay? So I'm sorry, but I like could not, and they're from two sort of different categories. So the first one is the 25K. I told you it was coming back. So this was actually my second 25K in
She's a main character, this 25K.
and truly in my life and in my swimming career. So after I did that like very ill-considered and like not at all like thought out first 25K, I actually did quite well in the event, okay? But I like erased that narrative because I was like, I'm never doing this again. So my narrative is like, it's not my race, okay? But I actually was like 10th or something at Worlds in this event, and I was 15, which is crazy. When I think back about it now, I'm like, oh my God. But then at the time, I was like, that was awful. I want not to see or hear from her again. So cut to like 4 years later, 2013 Worlds, in the US like qualifying system for open water, it was like the top two swimmers would swim the 10K, which was the Olympic event. So when you qualify for world championships, you have two spots for each country. So the top two swimmers would get to swim the 10. Like they've since changed it a bit and like made some tweaks, but that was back in my day. And then if you got third, you would get the 25 because normally the top two swimmers would choose the 10 and the 5. And then the third and the fourth would sort of like end up with the 25K. You do not say no to Worlds because Worlds is like what you train for and exist for. But my sort of pact with myself was never getting third or fourth because I'm never doing the 25K again. 2013, third, straight up. And I saw it coming into the like touch bar. I knew I was third. And I remember thinking to myself, first of all, I was very psyched I was on the team because that is the thing. But I just remember thinking, are you serious? Like, no, everything I've done, all of the work I've put in, I'm faster, I'm fitter, I'm stronger. And I'm back where at my least favorite like stop on the on the train station line. So I ended up like sort of having to accept that I was doing this again, which for me was like kind of, I felt mature at the time. So I said to myself, okay, it's Worlds in Barcelona. Obviously I'm committing to this with all of the knowledge I have from that thing I tried to wipe out of my entire existence. And what I remembered was that it was like most of the race was pretty chill. So like when we swam it, it was like 5 hours kind of chill. And then 1 hour where I couldn't believe how fast the girls went at the end, right? Like they went up to 5K race speed for the last 5K. And I was like, that shouldn't be humanly possible, but apparently it is. So let's figure it out. So that summer I worked both with my club coach, who was my dad, and also with my college coach because I was taking a class at university.
That's so nice that your dad was one of the coaches you worked with.
Amazing, incredible coach, the funniest person, probably where my sense of humor, especially in like sport, comes from. And so he and Jim and I kind of like designed something for the 25K. This is what's hilarious. It was my input because they were like, listen, neither of us have done the 25K. We know the science behind it, but like, let's sort of like take your experience and build something. I had like not that long to train for it. Maybe only like a month and a half or something. It wasn't even that long. But I was like, okay, the distance is what really did me in. So every Saturday I did a 5-hour practice for like the entire like summer. And this is what teammates are for. Jim Henry, for being there in the morning from 6 to 11 on these Saturdays, is the reason why I have this medal. And so like, thank you, Jim. So I would do this like 2-hour practice, and then the rest of my team would show up and we would do another 2-hour practice. And then I was supposed to stay alone for the last hour and we would do something really fast for a literal whole hour. Okay. Cause I was like training for this last hour. And my teammates would stay. They would do a 3-hour practice in the summer. And for university swimming, that's like not like you just have to stay in shape. You're not competing. And they would stay and do like 2.5K efforts with me or like 5 1,000s. And they would stay for this whole thing. So that is like Casey Lincoln. She was always there with me. Those are these people who are just like, I mean, they would do anything for your teammates. They're like, well, what's another hour of my life? And I think like that's like truly the beauty and the source of like a lot of my success is my teammates and my coaches. So I came what I thought was like super prepared for this World Championships. And I was like, I know what I'm doing. I'm in amazing shape. My last hour is going to be fire. Okay, that would have been great if that was the case. We dive in. 2 hours in, the like geniuses who worked at World Aquatics, which was FINA back then, decided that if they started the men's race 20 minutes, 25 minutes actually, ahead of the women on a 30-minute loop, that it would be fine. And we were like, but you do realize that's technically 5 minutes behind the women, right? And like in a usual 10K, it's about a 6-minute difference, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more. So we were like, after 2 hours, the men will catch the women. And they were like, no, 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 we did the math. And we were like, but the math says that after 10K, if they are 5 minutes behind, they'll probably catch the women. And they said, no. After 10K, the men's pack caught the women's pack. But what happens when you have these extremely badass women swimmers? They say, well, it's a draft legal sport. Technically, they can't disqualify all of us for drafting. So we're going to draft off the men's race until all of the other women fall off. And then we're just going to like sail it on through. We spent 2 hours swimming with the men. So I've now can prove that we can swim with the men's race, like, because I literally did it. And it was insane because they were very violent to us, specifically because they were angry that we were keeping up with them. And I thought I was in dead last the entire time because I was in last when the boys passed us. And I was like, sprinting my life out for 2 hours in the middle of this race. I was like, this is the worst idea. And I'm like 0% prepared. It was the worst 2 hours of my life, and I had Lana Del Rey stuck in my head, which is a bit of a downer. I love her music, but like it's not a vibey situation. So I just remember being like not in a space. And then I remember asking as I was like taking a feed, which in open water swimming is like drinking during the race. I shouted like, where am I? And the coach said 9th. And I was like, 9th, not 29th. And so I started being like, I'm going to take a peek where I am in this pack. So I was like, if I'm in 9th, actually, I can start to like maybe make a move. And by the time the like men's race sort of split off to finish and we still had that like last hour or so, I had moved up the pack and I was in like the top. So we get to the last hour. I'm psyched. I'm like, I'm ready for this. I'm trained for this. This is my moment. I sprint it with all I got. I get up to the front. I'm leading. Like we have 500 to go. I feel great. And then all of a sudden, I start paying for that middle 2 hours. Now I'm sprinting down the straightaway that's 500 meters. I look behind me and I think like, okay, the people who have the most speed are the Italian swimmer who was in the race at the time and the German swimmer. And I was like, as long as they're not directly behind me, I probably still have a chance at this gold. I look back and in my tired mind, I'm like, nope, neither of them. And it was literally both of them. So I was like, we're good. And it was literally Martina Grimaldi and Angela Maurer who were back there.
Delusion.
The delusion. I was like, oh, we're golden. Anyway, like, of course, like 100 meters before the finish, they both pulled up on either side of me. By that time, I had stopped moving. So if they hadn't, I probably like wouldn't have finished because I just like surfed in between them. We all came in and touched within like a couple tenths of a second. And what happened was that at first they showed that like the German swimmer had won and that the Italian swimmer was second. And I knew I was third because I like heard everyone touching. And then they flipped the names. So the German swimmer saw them flip the names and was upset. The Italian swimmer hadn't seen that she'd won. So they were both upset. And I was amped because I had a medal in the 25K. So everyone watching was like, who's going to tell her she lost? But like, I knew. But I was just like so excited to be done. So even though this was like the worst experience again, I think the thing that like makes it my favorite is that I had never, ever thought about quitting ever in a race until I got to that race. And in the middle of that, I genuinely like thought to myself, what would happen if I just like missed a buoy and got out? And coming back from that, having never had this thought before, was like a huge challenge. And like I felt like mentally that was my most challenging race ever. So that's like one of my favorite moments. It's just like so much happened, but like let's wrap it up and put it behind me. Never again. And then my second favorite moment, which is not to do with like the actual competition, is like the moment that I became like the best of friends with Becca Mann. Like we were rooming together this one summer and we had like not vibed the year before for reasons of we're like kind of the same person and it just like didn't work. And she actually wrote an incredible book and I read the book and I myself am a character in the book and it is so funny to me because I can like see from her perspective exactly what I felt that year in 2013 and actually the Barcelona year. And we became like the closest of friends when we roomed together at 2014. I think like they put us in a room together being like, well, this will be a disaster. And we came out of it just like best friends for life. And I think like that sort of goes back to all of the themes, which is like the little bit of like pitting women against each other, and the fact that like your teammates are your greatest source of strength. Like we absolutely pushed each other. I've never seen anybody swim the last 800 of 10K like Becca man. And she inspired me so much, like in training and in competitions and also as a person. She's just like an incredible friend and absolutely made my swimming career like what it is. And like friendships like that are the things I think are my favorite moment. So that's like a ridiculously long answer, but it
No,
is
it's
deserved
good.
because I love Becca and the 25K was long, so it makes sense.
Oh, no, I think it is the female friendships that are like forged out of sport are really interesting because there's people that I'm friends with, but like at the time at sport, there was sometimes like, as you said, a scientific term, not vibing, or like
Right, that's the
we'd been
studies.
pitted
Mhm.
against each other, and so that was like
Yeah.
in your mind, that's what's happening, and like that is your competition, even though they're on the same team, sort of thing. So it is really interesting. And then as you get older or you leave sport and life changes, like those friendships like come back together, and then you're like,
Mhm.
oh no, actually, this is just a normal person, and somebody had like said all of this other stuff. There's all this faff going, all this like
Yeah.
noise almost happening around us, and that's maybe why we weren't connecting in a positive way.
That's totally it, like, the framing of the way that you meet these people and are presented to them is, like, so oppositional, and yes, you're competing, but, like, it just means you're in the same profession, and so to
Mm,
me, they're like colleagues more than anything, and they're also the people who will understand you the most when you're competing, when you're training, and then also after. So I think, like, my biggest advice in a lot of ways would be to, like, make friends with your competitors, learn from them, have fun, like, enjoy racing each other. Like, it was so much fun to race these people. Like, I genuinely loved getting to compete against them and, like, learn from them every single time. They were always doing
mm.
something smart or something different that I could always learn from.
Thank you so much for listening to part one of Eva's podcast. Part two will be out next week, along with my website, hopefully. So if you have been tuning in to the Only Did Fish podcast on Instagram, you will see that there have been a few posts about merch in the wings, but I'm not the technological wizard, so that has been very, very, very slow. But anyway, stay tuned and chat to you next week. Bye bye.